Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gururev Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tat Padam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Marupena Sansitaha Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Shakti Rupena Sansitaha Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Buddhi Rupena Sansitaha Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Lakshmi Rupena Sansitaha Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. So we're continuing with the allegory that Hemaleka is relating to Hemachuda about her friend who had undesirable company. And of course, all of these are metaphors for the ways in which ignorance clouds the intellect and the terrible ramifications of it. And they're all articulated in the guise of these various unsavory characters. So we're now on verse 214. Would you help us out, please?
This is 114 or 200?
114.
Okay.
114. I made a mistake again.
Chapter 5. Asmin pure sakhi putro yada shranto bhavatyalam tada matu samutsange sthira shete sunirbharam. When my friend's son Asthira becomes completely fatigued in the city, then he sleeps deeply on the lap of his mother.
So this is an allusion to what happens in deep sleep. So on Monday night, when we're doing Viveka Chudamani, we're going to start the Anandamaya Kosha, which is what this verse refers to. The bliss sheath. The bliss sheath is experienced in two ways. The first is when we satisfy a desire. We derive happiness from it. The second place in which the Anandamaya Kosha is experienced is in deep sleep. So in deep sleep, the mind is all folded up into its causal state, the state of pure ignorance, the state of pure vasana. They are all in their seed form. In that state, not dream, but deep sleep, there is no ego and there is no world available. And so it is blissful. Everyone without exception enjoys deep sleep. And if you've got a lot of problems, sleep is even more desirable. And if you're worrying and you can't sleep, oh, it's terrible. How do we know so much about that? Well, it's through memory. Many people think they are unconscious or not aware in deep sleep. And we can prove that you are aware in deep sleep through the law of memory. The law of memory is the rememberer and the experiencer must be the same entity. You cannot remember something you haven't experienced. So you do not know what I had for dinner this evening. Why? You were not there. I can remember that I had lentil soup. You cannot remember it because you were not there. But I can ask you, did you sleep well last night? And you will say, oh no, I got up 3 or 4 times. It was a very troubled night. Or you can say, oh yes, I slept so soundly. I woke up in the same position I was in when I went to bed. But you can ask me, Jim, did you sleep well last night? I'm not going to tell you. You do not know because you were not there to experience. So what is deep sleep? Awareness is illuminating pure ignorance. Another way to look at it. If you are in a room and everything is darkened with blackout curtains, but your eyes are wide open, you are not blind, you are seeing darkness. If someone lights a match, you immediately see it. If you're blind and someone lights a match, you can't see it. So, seeing darkness is like the self illuminating the mind, folded up into deep sleep, the Anandamaya Kosha. So here, metaphorically, what she's referring to is in deep sleep. The mind gets a respite. And here she says, sleeps on the lap of the mother. Meaning, because there's no Vikshepa Shakti, no projecting power of the mind. Only Avarana Shakti, only veiling power. It's blissful. Now, there's another state which I like to talk about. It gives you a sense of how we know that it's so blissful. And it's called Vasana Ananda, Vasanananda. I call it snooze alarm bliss. So you have to get up in the morning and the alarm goes off. You're awake and you hit the snooze button and you just hit your pillow and you go, oh, I don't want to get up yet. There's just enough awareness, enough mind there to enjoy that edge of unconsciousness, of deep sleep. Oh, don't bother me. Just a few more minutes. And then 10 minutes later, bring, you hit it again. And then you start to think, oh, I've got to get up. I have that report to do at the office. Or, oh, I have to call so-and-so. And, oh, later on today, I have to call Auntie who's not feeling well. And all the vrittis of the mind returns. The vrittis return, and the bliss fades like morning mist. It's gone. What object has caused the happiness? Nothing. It's the absence of the projecting power of the mind. Now, when we experience it in the world, desire, object of desire become one. Yeah. For a moment, the mind comes right home. Again, the Vikshepa Shakti has ceased for a moment. I think the happiness is in the object, but in truth, I just used the object to momentarily free my mind from the word that we get in this text is kartavya, the obligatory actions, the vancha, the wanting, the longing. Now, the Anandamaya kosha, when you're experiencing it through the objects of the world, will vary in intensity and vary in duration. It's essentially a function of your punya and your papa, your merit and your sin. So as the result of good actions, you get to experience it a lot. As a result of unmeritorious actions, you suffer a lot in life. Any questions about this verse where at night the mind goes and sleeps on the lap of the mother?
I have a question.
Yes, who's this?
Daniel.
Can't hear you, who?
Daniel.
Okay, Daniel, go for it.
So if the question relates to using this concept of the law of memory, I don't fully, like, it doesn't fully make sense to me. If I use a different example.
Sure.
Say I have a heart attack and an ambulance takes me to the hospital and they put me under and they do surgery. And then I wake up and I come out of it and I'm still alive. Do I have a memory that I had a good heart surgery, or do I know that I had a good heart surgery because I'm still alive?
You know that you did not know anything for 6 or 8 hours.
Right. But do I have a memory?
What you know for sure is there's a snip of time that's gone.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
You don't know the heart surgery. You know that you do not know.
Correct.
But if you went and had heart surgery and nobody told me, I wouldn't have known it.
Right. But I don't know that I had heart surgery through memory. So I'm confused about the law of the memory part.
Okay. If I am in the room and it's pitch dark and my eyes are wide open and you move the furniture around, I don't know it.
Right.
Likewise, when the mind is in that state where the mind is folded up, there's no thinking, there are no vrittis. So there's no awareness of any world.
What does that have to do with memory?
Because after the fact, when you come out of anesthetic in the waiting room, have you ever been under a general anesthetic?
Yeah, I had a hernia surgery.
Yeah, you come out and it's like, 5 minutes before you were going into the anesthesiologist was saying count backwards from 5, or 10.
Yeah.
It's like there's a huge chunk of time that's missing.
Right.
Isn't that your direct experience?
Yeah, but I don't call that memory.
No, you don't know it, but how do you know there was time missing?
Well, I mean, if I looked at a clock before it happened and after it happened, then
Exactly. So what you know for sure is there was a period of time where you are sure that you knew nothing.
sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know that about your surgery because I wasn't there. You can only know about the Anandamaya Kosha after the fact.
Right. And it's based on noticing an effect of before and after.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how I would sort of understand it or explain it. The part
All
that I
right.
get confused about is like how memory has anything to do with that. Because I don't remember any of that. I just notice a difference of how I feel when I wake up, either from surgery or from sleep.
Going back to deep sleep. Did you sleep well last night?
Yeah, last night I did.
How do you know it?
Because when I woke up, I felt good. And when
Yeah.
I went to sleep, I was tired. So I noticed that there was that difference.
So what you know for sure is how long did you sleep? Do you know?
7, 8 hours.
Okay, so you slept 8 hours, and what you know for sure is you don't remember a thing.
Correct.
You know for sure that there's 8 hours that are snipped out of your mind experience.
Yeah.
But you had to have been there to experience it, or you couldn't have deduced that in the morning.
Okay. I don't really follow that logic, but I do know when I wake up that I'm awake again and I feel great because I slept. I know that.
Okay, let's put it on the shelf because there's
Fine.
one piece of this that's very important. Nobody gets enlightened in the deep sleep state.
Okay, got it.
So it's simply the argument the scriptures use. I didn't make this up. This is what the scriptures use.
Yeah.
So
Jim, if I might add,
please go ahead.
So it's memory in the sense or similar to how if I press the record button on a tape machine, but I keep the mic muted. So I have a length of recording which is blank, which is different from no recording. So it's you mean memory in that sense for this period, right?
All right. That works. I like that. The thing to understand is I like to use the example. So my right hand here is the self. It's illuminating the chitta, the stuff of mind, in the waking state, in the dream state, folded up in the deep sleep state. Watch very carefully. Samadhi. Mind returns. Oh my gosh, there's nobody there. That's what happens. But the self does not go unconscious. It illumines pure ignorance. So when the scriptures say, the man of wisdom never sleeps, People would see that in scriptures and they'd go, Swamiji never sleeps. Oh, the poor man, he's awake all night long. Now, there are states where you're not really totally asleep. Oftentimes, if you're a deep meditator, you will need much less sleep. Swamiji only slept 4 hours a night. But you know what Swamiji's experience was during that 4 hours? Nothing. But the self is still there. The self doesn't shut off. It illumines pure ignorance. That's the important point. Is that a little bit more useful, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Okay. Good questions. All right, next verse.
अस्थिरस्तु यदा सुप्त तदा तस्य सुतादयः स्वापं समाधिगच्छन्ति नान्यो जागर्ति कंचन. When Asthira has slept, then his sons and others obtain sleep. Any other one is not awake.
Yes, so when the mind is asleep, all the other functions cease. They sleep too. Seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, hands, feet, nose, tongue, and skin, desire, aversion, flaming mouth, anger, all of it gone. Everything folded up into a seed state. What do we mean by a seed state? This is why, so Puneet here is an IT guy. And his wife, Soundarya, is a product manager. So when this day's vasanas have finished expressing themselves, what happens? They get tired. So their experience of deep sleep is the same. I know nothing. But Soundarya does not wake up as an IT person, and Puneet doesn't wake up as a product manager. So the vasanas are still there in their seed form. This is why we have the appearance of a continuity of life from one day to the next. The vasanas are not gone. They're just in a seed-like form. The example I like to give, it's like if you have spring bulbs. I used to raise dahlias when I lived in the city. And in the fall, when they had all finished blooming, I would dig them up and put them in paper sacks and label the various bulbs what they were these little orange pom-poms, and these were big purple dinner plates, etc. Because when they're there in the paper bags, they all look the same. So you can only infer the nature of the bulbs from their effects. So what you do is you put them in the freezer or the refrigerator to fake them out because they need a cold winter in order to really bloom well. In the spring, you put them back in the ground, and then sure enough, the bag that said orange pom-poms, they do not come up as yellow dinner plates. Vasanas are the same. So they all go to this seed form in deep sleep. Pure ignorance. Why we talk about a vasana has two powers. Avarana Shakti, veiling power, pure ignorance. And then Vikshepa Shakti, projecting a world and an ego functioning in the world. Any questions about this? Next one.
Tada tad rakshati puram asthirasya priyasakha pracharakhya praticharan purvadvara yuge muhuhu. At that time, the beloved friend of Asthira named Prachara, moving repeatedly at the two gates in the front, protects that city. Note: Prachara movement, the friend of Asthira, is prana or the breath. The two gates are the two nostrils.
Yes. So even though the mind is in a sea-like state, the prana continues to work, keeping the body alive. Next one.
Asthirasyapi yamata sakhi me tanayena sa tasya sakhi cha ya shvashrur sati ya swabhavatah sa samachhadyatana sarvan putrena sarakshati. My friend, who is also the mother of Asthira, when she slept along with the sun, then her friend and mother-in-law named Shunya, who was naturally a bad woman, covering all of them together with her son named Mudha, protects them.
Yes. So here, this shunya, this void, is the deep, dark nothingness of deep sleep. Is there a note?
No note for this one.
All right, next one.
Evam sarveshu sukteshu prapya swam mataram tada ananditaham bhavami matra rishta chiram nanu punasta nusthitan shighram anusanyami chanvaham. Thus, when all of them are sleeping, then going to my mother, I become happy indeed, embraced for a long time by my mother. Again, I also follow quickly every day those who have risen up from sleep. Note: during deep sleep, the individualized consciousness or jiva is absorbed in pure undivided consciousness, though such absorption happens under the veil of ignorance. It is not the state where pure undivided consciousness shines by itself, unobstructed by ignorance, which is the state of bodha or jnana.
Yes. So there's an important distinction here. In Mandukya Upanishad, we have some very interesting instructions in meditation. And in it, Gaudapada makes the distinction where in that scripture, he differentiates between manolaya and manonasha. Manolaya, laya means moving towards unconsciousness, the dissolution of the mind. So many people will spend years sitting down with the eyes closed, or maybe in a chair, and they put on some music and drift into a sleep-like state. The qualities of laya is very thick, and your mind just kind of drifts and wanders, just on the edge of deep sleep. And people think this is meditation. And people can be deluded by this for years. When I'm teaching meditation and people in class are sitting in meditation, I will open my eyes and I'll look at their posture. One of the clearest ways for me to tell that if someone is going into Laya is their bodies will collapse. Their heads will drop down, their spines will collapse, etc. This is why, as a rule, unless you have health issues, meditating lying down is not advised, because you will probably go into manolaya. Now, in the yoga asana schools, they will put you on the floor and you'll go into Shavasana, corpse pose, and they'll give you visualizations and stuff like that. And if you're doing all that, the next thing you know is you'll hear the person next to you going right into Laya. And for many people, this is very helpful because it's deep relaxation. But it's not meditation. The mind at meditation is silent, but vigilant and alert. If you have a cat and you see it, for example, stalking a fly or a moth, and it'll crouch, and it will be absolutely still, absolutely alert, and then bounce. That's the mind at meditation. So in some of the Zen practices, you always meditate with your eyes open. You sit on your zafu facing a wall with your eyes open. And if you're in what they call a sesshin, where it's a meditation retreat, there'll be someone who'll be walking around the meditation hall with this bamboo stick called the Kiyosaku stick. And if they see someone collapsing their posture, their head nodding, they'll hit them with the stick, wake them up. Because meditation is the mind silent, but vigilant and alert. Then when the thoughting stops, the technical term that Gaudapada uses is manonasha. Literally means the destruction of the mind. This is not some sort of enfeeblement of the mind. When mind as a mind with thought flow stops, and what's left is pure awareness. Any thoughts, comments, or discussions about this?
Quick clarification, Jim.
Yes.
So just as the word suggests, manolaya can happen many times, but manonash can happen only once, right?
Well, let's not debate that.
Okay.
What I'm more concerned about is that you do not think that you're successfully meditating if you're basically going towards sleep. You could say at the moment when knowledge dawns on the mind, then the mind is no longer a mind as we would call it a mind. So in that sense, you're right. Or we could say manonasha is another name for nirvikalpa samadhi. People who can have many, many times they go into samadhi. But the mind is no longer, if we think of mind as identification with the personal sense of self, then yes, it can only happen once. But there's nuances to this. I don't know if that's helpful at all.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Jim, one more question.
Please, who's that?
Vladimir.
Hi, Vladimir.
Jim. Okay, you said when the thoughts stop, what is left is pure awareness. And the question is, who is doing the awareness? Is it the mind or the self?
Who is what?
When you say the only thing that's left is pure awareness, is it the mind that is then purely aware, or is it the self that is just purely aware?
Listen very carefully. Your mind is not aware.
Okay.
You are awareness. When you are aware of thoughts, images, feelings, etc., that's mind.
Mm.
Your mind is essentially inert. Can one thought illumine another thought?
No.
Can a feeling illumine a memory? No. All that content is illumined by me. I know all those various phenomena. So Swamiji used to explain it by what he called spiritual algebra. Mind, M, equals A, awareness, plus TF, thought flow. So if I take thought flow and I move it to the other side of the equal sign, I have to make it minus. So mind, M, minus TF, thought flow, equals pure awareness. Mathematical representation of meditation. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Now, don't get too caught up. Well, is it mind or is it intellect? Is it? The whole point is these are just ways of describing the stuff that awareness illuminates. Like, it really doesn't matter whether it's a feeling or a thought or an image or a memory. It's just knowable. If it's knowable, that's not it. Drop it. Who knows it? I do. All right, next verse.
अस्थिरस्य सखायोऽयं प्रचाराख्यो महाबलः स सर्वान् स्थिरमुखान् पोषयन्त्यनुवासरम्. This friend of Asthira, having great power, who is called Prachara, nourishes everyone, beginning with Asthira every day.
So this deep sleep, prachara, that's the prana, that's the vital force. And of course, we tend to divide it into what we call the panchavayu, the 5 vital airs. So see if I can remember them. There's the main prana, which governs breathing, mostly inspiration, breathing in. Then apana, which is both breathing out or elimination. Then there is samana, which is digestion. Then there's dhyana, which is circulation, and udana, which is thinking. So these are the various subsidiary functions of the main prana. Prana is not breath. Prana is vital force. But through control of the breath, one can gain control of the various vital forces. That whole science is called pranayama. All right, Next one.
स एको बहुधा भूत्वा पुरं च पुरवासिनः व्याप्य रक्षित्यनुदिनं सर्वान् संश्लेषयत्यपि. He, the one becoming variously and pervading the city and its residents, protects everyone and also unites them with their respective objects every day.
So here again, we're talking about the prana. The prana is what causes all the various instruments to be able to function and then make contact with the various sense objects. Next one.
Tam vina te hi vilishta nashta surapi sarvatha sutrena hina manayo mala baddha yatha prithak. Without him, they would indeed be lost entirely, being separated just as beads fastened to a rosary fall separately without the string.
So when the vital force is not there, everything falls apart. So if you've ever, for example, been at a deathbed of a loved one, you know, you can see even towards the end just the very shallow breathing. Then the last breath happens. And if you're sensitive, you can feel how things disperse. Sometimes you can see the subtle body above the physical body. And whoosh, there's this huge release of energy. And then you look at what a moment ago was your loved one, and now it's just a lump. Something has gone. None of the functions can happen anymore. Next one.
Sa evam macha sangamya sarvai sanyojayat param maya sanjeevatityuntam sutradharo hi tatpure. Thus, associating with me also, Prachara unites me with everyone thereafter. Very much enlivened by me, he is the stage manager who controls the activities in that city. Note, mind and the senses of perception are imbued with awareness only through the vital energy whose gross manifestations is breath, and this vital energy, which is a power of the individualized consciousness, is enlivened by the latter.
So the prana, the vital energy, is enlivened by the Brahman contact, the touch of Brahman. The best worldly example I can use is the relationless relationship between electricity and various appliances. So, in the lamp, the bulb cannot shine of itself. The ceiling fan cannot turn of itself. The stereo cannot sing of itself. Electricity is not light, not motion, not sound. But electricity enlivens the bulb and makes it shine. Electricity enlivens the fan and makes it turn. Electricity enlivens the stereo and makes it sing. So also, nothing, the prana, which then becomes the vital force for all the functions of the body, can do nothing without Brahman contact. You are life itself. There's a wonderful saying of Deepak Chopra that I love. The opposite of death is not life. The opposite of death is birth. There is no opposite to life. Gita uses this wonderful term, asparsha yoga. Swamiji would call it the touch of the untouched, to explain how the self as the enlivening principle causes everything to function, yet itself is never really touched by them. Next verse.
जीर्णे तु तत्पुरे चान्य पुरं तान्नयति धृतम् एवं प्रचारं संश्रित्य पुराणाम् अधिपोऽभवत् बहूनाम् अस्थिरो नूनं विचित्राणां क्रमेण वै. When that city is worn out, he, Prachara, leads them on to another city immediately. Thus, leaning on Prachara, Asthira verily became the ruler of many strange cities in due course.
So here, the scripture is talking about the whole phenomenon of death and rebirth. So when the physical body is worn out, going back to what I was sharing with you, if you've been at the deathbed of a loved one, and at the final moment, when the final breath happens and the heart stops, the subtle body gathers the prana, moves to another vibrational level, a loka, we call that. Loka is means a world or people. And the ISKCON people tend to call this a different planet. I prefer to think of it more as another vibrational level. All those lokas are right here with us all the time. But we then go through processes of finishing up karma, stuff like that, and then impelled by our desires, we incarnate into another body. So here the metaphor is the cities. So that subtle body has gone from city to city for how many times? Millions of times. Is there a note there, Puneet?
Not for this one.
All right, next one.
Sati putropya asthira sasranshitopi mahabalam maya cha bhavitotyantam sarvatha dukkha bhagabhut. That Asthira, though the son of a good woman, and had recourse to Prachara, possessed of great power, and also very much cherished by me, was suffering grief in every way.
Yes. So the mind, when it's under the throes of illusion and delusion, ignorance, is unsteady. So again, Krishna says the mind is the enemy of the one in ignorance. It is the friend of the wise. In the Ramayana, the basic imagery is, of course, Lord Ram is the self. But Hanuman is the mind, all powerful, do anything. Where is Hanuman happiest? in the embrace of Ram. That's where the mind belongs. It's in the embrace of the self. Next one.
चपला महशान्याभ्यां पत्नीभ्यां सुषुमागतात् ज्वालामुखी निन्दवृत्ति अभिधपुत्रयोगेन च अन्यै पुत्रै पञ्चभिः स सर्वत्राभिविकार्षितः. On account of his close association with his two wives, Chapala and Mahashana, and his two sons named Jwalamukha and Nindyavritta, and also his 5 other sons, he, Asthira, was pulled very much everywhere.
Yes. So because of the association with ignorance and the whole family of undesirables, the mind is tormented. It's restless, discontent. Going on.
Jim, I have a question.
Please.
Just to sort of keep track with the allegory which has been started, right? So this is Hemalekha who is telling her story, which is that of the Jiva. She's equated with the Jiva. And her good friend is Buddhi,
Yes.
whose offspring is this Asthira mind. And in what is being said in this, the previous verse and the verses that go on from here, they say that Asthira goes from city to city, taking birth after birth. And but the verse says that he was very much cherished by me and was suffering grief in every way. It suggests that the Jiva and the Buddhi, they remain the same, but the mind is going from body to body. Is that right?
Well, it's a good question. The equipment, the body, mind, and intellect. Remember, here they're because this is a tantrika text, they're just calling the jiva as almost like an entity, like a thing. Shankara and Gaudapada, they use terms like jiva bhavana, that it's actually an attitude, it's a feeling. There is no thing called the jiva. It's a function within the Vijnanamaya kosha, the knowledge sheath, which is the buddhi plus the organs of perception. So it's a function in there. And I don't want to get into too much the construct of how ego actually functions like that. It's fascinating how what it does. But the point is, all of that is not self. All of that is fundamentally inert. The self never really incarnates.
Okay.
The best way to understand it, Vedanta becomes very simple to understand if you thoroughly analyze the dream state. Do you incarnate into a dream?
No, I watch the dream.
Well, my experience in the dream is I have a dream body and I have a dream ego identified with that body.
Yes.
And I have a mind and an intellect, and I see a phenomenal world, and there's a story that goes on. But upon awakening, the dream body, the dream mind, the dream intellect, the dream ego, gone. None of them were real. The truth is, I was never in the dream. The dream was in me. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yes, I got it.
Now, what Krishna says in Gita, I think it's 4th chapter. All this is strung on me like mani sutre, like gems on a thread, like a necklace. Beautiful metaphor. Oh, Krishna's in all of us. I love that. But then later on, he's going to say, well, actually, I am not in them. They are in me. Just like what we were talking about. You are the God of your dream. All the people, places, things, and conditions of your dream, you have created them. Now, do the elements in your dream really exist? If you dream you're driving a sports car, is there a real sports car that's inside you? No, it's just an imagination. So then Krishna says, actually, they are not really in me. Behold my divine Maya, the support of it all. So whether or not the jiva is like an entity, we certainly feel like it. Or whether it's jiva bhavana, just a deeply rooted attitude or conviction, don't worry about it. Those are just subtle distinctions from one school of philosophy to another. The bottom line, the most important thing to understand is you are a jockey. The self in you is unborn. Amritam. You are beyond death. Nirupaham. Without a form. Chidakash, vast and empty like the sky. Chidananda Rupam, Shivoham, Shivoham. I am of the form of bliss consciousness. I am Shiva. I am auspiciousness. So that's the important thing in all this. Does that help?
Thanks very much, Jim. Thank you.
All right. Excellent question. Basically, the philosophical discussion between the Advaita school and the Visishtadvaita school is all about this whole point of is there an individual and is it a permanent thing? And it's unimportant in the end. But we'll let the logicians worry about it. From the standpoint of a practitioner, you investigate your own self and see if there's an individual there or there's just a vast empty space of consciousness. You'll find out. All right, next one.
Mahaklesha paritatma sukha lesha vivarjitah itastata kvachit putre panchabhi sa vikarshitah. With his heart seized by great anguish, deprived of even a little happiness, he was pulled hither and thither by the 5 suns somewhere.
So the mind trying to find happiness in the world. I just put it on an economic basis. It's 95 cents worth of work for a nickel's worth of pleasure. Or as Shakespeare says it, we grunt and sweat under a weary life for so little. Going on.
क्वचित् चपला यन्तं चालित खेदमीवान् क्वचिन् महाशनाहेतो अशानार्थं प्रधावति. Sometimes disturbed very much by Chapala, he attained to grief. Sometimes on account of Mahashana, he runs for food or enjoyments.
So again, talking about the various vicissitudes, the afflictions, the bedevilments that occur to the mind. Going on.
क्वचित् ज्वालामुखाक्षिप्तो निर्दग्धापादमस्तकः महामूर्छां समायाति जावित् तत्प्रतिक्रियताम्. Sometimes overpowered by Jwalamukha, tormented from head to foot, he goes to the state of deep fainting, not knowing its remedy.
Yes. So if the anger becomes too intense, we become totally unconscious and do really stupid things. We're in the state of delusion. Going on. Puneet, how many more verses were we, I think, getting towards the end of this, aren't we?
Yeah, we have about 10 more.
Okay. Let's see if we can finish them this evening.
Nindhavritta क्वचित् प्राप्य गर्हितो भत्सितर्प्रपरैः मृततुल्यं स्वात्मानं मन्यते शोकसन्ततः. Sometimes going to Nindhyavritta, despised and abused by others, he considers himself equal to a dead person covered over by grief.
So again, in this state, I attribute to myself the qualities of the not self. This is called adhyas, superimposition. I am sorrowful. I am angry. I am a terrible person. I am so bad. I am worthless. I am depressed, etc. Going on.
दुष्पत्नी पुत्र सहितो मोहितो दुष्कुलोद्भवः पत्नीपुत्रैः समाक्रान्तो नियम आनस्तुतैः सदा उवास तैर्विचित्रेषु परेषु च वाचेषु हि. Accompanied by his bad wives and sons, the deluded Asthira, born of a bad family, overcome by the wives and sons, and always being led by them, lived with them in strange cities of various kinds.
So, impelled by our bad habits, which have as their root ignorance, I find myself in all sorts of undesirable environs with lower companions. This can also mean we go from unfortunate incarnation to unfortunate incarnation. Going on.
क्वचित् कान्तारकीर्णेषु क्रव्यादकुलभूमिषु क्वचित् अन्त्यन्ततत्पेतेषु क्वचित् जडेषु च क्वचित् पूतिवहास्थेषु क्वचित् गाढतमसु च. Sometimes he lived in lands full of people eating raw flesh, spread in large forests, sometimes in places which were extremely hot, sometimes in cold and frigid places, sometimes in places bearing putrid substances, and sometimes in dense darkness.
So the whole idea is the more and more we get caught up in an addictive relationship with the world, the more we suffer and the worse our circumstances become. Going on.
Evam bhuyoти dukkhena dukhite तनये स्थिरे सखी च मे दुःख मूढ़ा bhavat dukkha sangata sada. Thus, when the son Asthira was afflicted with great sorrow, thus when the son of Asthira was afflicted with great sorrow again, my friend became confounded by grief always due to her bad association.
So the intellect, the buddhi, is tormented by the bad associations of the mind. Going on.
Swabhava satyapi murdha taman vahapmapi priya mudhe vatyanta bhavam tatkutamba parayana. Dear, I thought I was good by nature. I also became extremely attached to her family in vain like a fool along with her.
So again, the idea is it seems like I, pure awareness, seem to take on the qualities of the not self. Shankara uses the metaphor of a clear gem put on various colors of cloth. The gem seems to be of these various colors, but in fact, the gem is clear. So it only seems like the self undergoes all this trouble. Going on.
Kohi du sangata saukhyam prapnuya la leshata kvachit gachan marusthalake grishme trishna shantim yatha naraha. Who indeed can obtain happiness, even a little, anywhere out of bad company, as a man seeking the alleviation of his thirst by going to a sandy desert in summer?
So again, this idea that in the world you can't find peace as long as the mind is covered by delusion and the mind is unsteady as a result. Going on.
Evam chitatare kale samvritte mama sa sakhi mohitatyanta dekhena maya rahasi sangata. When a very long time had passed in this manner, that friend of mine who was bewildered by extreme dejection joined me in solitude. Note, in,
Go
soli-
ahead.
in solitude refers to the absence of sense perceptions leading to the objectless self-awareness.
So, meditation. At some point, we withdraw from sense objects. The mind quietens down. Viveka, Vairagya, Shamariguna, Mumukshutva. Next one.
Madeka sangadhadik dviktam sa prapya saghacha saptitam jitva swatanayam hatva badhva tat tanayadikan maya sangamya manmatri puramasadayaddutam. Having obtained the means by her association with me alone, having met with a good husband, having conquered her son, having killed or bound his sons, and having united with me, she reached the city of my mother quickly. Note: the means obtained is vairagya, or freedom from attachment got through association of the intellect with the individualized consciousness alone, or the mere I consciousness or self-awareness. This is the method of self-investigation which destroys all thought constructs and hence all desires. The good husband is viveka or discrimination. The son conquered is the mind. His sons who were killed were krodha, anger, and lobha, greed, and his sons who were bound were the five organs of perception. United with me indicates abidance as the pure self-awareness or I consciousness, free from thought constructs. The city of the mother is the heart, and the mother is pure undivided consciousness, which is the ultimate reality.
I think it couldn't be any clearer. I have nothing to add to that. Again, heart here doesn't mean a physical location. It means when the intellect is at peace and all strivings have been let go of in the emotional nature. So that merging of mind and intellect is called the spiritual heart, the hridaya. Is that the end of it? Is there one more?
There's two more.
Two more.
Manmataram parivajya muhur muhur kalmasha anandarna vanirmagna swabhava bhavadanjasa. Embracing my mother again and again, she became free from sin and was soon possessed of a natural state sunk in an ocean of bliss. Note, this refers to nirvikalpa samadhi, or complete absorption in pure undivided consciousness.
And so she does it again and again. In the deepest meditation, when we taste the bliss of Brahman, this Atmaramana, it fulfills what we've been looking for. And this is what pulls the mind easily out of the world. And this is the process. We'll go into more deeply. It's just been covered in a few verses here. The main idea of this chapter is to see the cause of our sorrow. Is that the end of the chapter?
Last verse.
Last verse.
Evam tvamapi durvrittam nigrihya sakhi sambhavam prapya swam mataram natha sukham nityam samapnuhi etatte kathitam natha swanubhutam sukhatspadam. Lord, you also obtain thus eternal happiness, having restrained the one with bad conduct born of your friend and reaching your mother. Lord, this abode of happiness experienced by me has been narrated to you.
So here Hemaleka is saying, you get rid of your bad association as I have done. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to see what a dolt Hemachyuta is. But for now, we will end here. Maybe a couple minutes of questions. Anybody else have a comment or a question on this chapter?